In the small and quiet village of Nkata, life was slow but full of struggles. The sun always rose early, painting the red roofs and dusty paths in gold. People worked hard every day, fishing, farming, selling fruits by the roadside. Among them lived a young woman named Ada. She was known for her beauty and her loud laugh, but behind that smile was a heart full of pain. Ada had given birth to a baby boy named Tund. He was a small, quiet baby with big brown eyes that looked like they carried questions about the world. When he cried, his voice was soft, almost like he knew his mother's heart was already breaking. Ada was only 19. Her husband had left her when she became pregnant, saying he was not ready for such a life. Since then, Ada had been alone. The days after Tund's birth were hard. She lived in a small mud house with a leaking roof. Every morning she walked to the stream to fetch water, carrying Tund on her back. Sometimes she had nothing to eat but a few pieces of roasted corn. When night came, she would hold her baby close, whispering, "I'm trying, my son. I'm trying." But deep down, Ada was tired. Tired of hunger, tired of being alone, tired of watching others live better lives. In the same village lived older men who had money and power. They were traders and landowners. They often sat under the big mango tree near the market, laughing loudly, eating meat and drinking palm wine. Ada passed them every day and some of them noticed her. One of them, called Baba Sola, liked her beauty and her soft voice. He began calling her to sit near him whenever she walked by. He told her stories, gave her food and sometimes a few coins. At first, Ada refused to take the money. But as the days went by, hunger made her weak. One day Tund was crying because he was hungry, and Ada had nothing to feed him. That night she went to Baba Sola's house. He gave her food and clothes. Soon she started visiting more often and people in the village began to talk. They said she no longer cared for her baby. Ada tried to ignore them, but her heart was restless. As weeks passed, she began to feel ashamed of her own life. Every time she looked at Tund, she felt pain, not because she did not love him but because she felt like she had failed him. She wanted to give him a better life but she did not know how. The more she thought, the more her mind became clouded with wrong ideas. She began to believe that maybe someone else could take care of him better than she could. One evening, when the sky turned orange and the sound of drums filled the air, Ada sat outside her house with Tund in her arms. The baby smiled at her, his tiny fingers holding her dress. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Maybe this is the only way," she whispered. "Maybe someone kind will find you." Late that night, when the village was quiet and only the crickets were singing, Ada wrapped Tund in a small cloth. She carried him through the empty path that led to the old market. Her feet were cold and her heart beat fast. Every step felt heavy. When she reached the market, she placed Tund near a wooden stall. She looked around, no one was there. The baby stirred in his sleep, his lips moving as if he wanted to speak. Ada bent down, kissed his forehead and said softly, "I'm sorry, my son. I hope life will be kinder to you than it was to me." Then she turned away quickly, afraid that if she looked back she would not be able to leave. As she walked away, the wind blew gently through the empty stalls. The baby woke and began to cry, a soft, broken sound that echoed through the market. Ada stopped for a moment. Her heart screamed at her to turn around. But then she thought about her hunger, her shame, and her loneliness. She took another step forward and kept walking until she disappeared into the darkness. In the early hours of the morning, the market began to come alive again. The sound of roosters filled the air and women arrived to set up their stalls. One of them, an old woman named Mama Kemi, heard the cry of a baby. She followed the sound and found Tund wrapped in a torn cloth. The baby's cheeks were wet with tears, but his eyes were wide open, calm and full of life. Mama Kemi picked him up and looked around. No one was in sight. "Who would leave such a sweet child here?" she whispered. She pressed him to her chest, feeling his small heartbeat. "Don't worry, my little one. You are safe now." When she took him home, the whole village soon heard about the baby found at the market. Some said the child was cursed, others said he was blessed. But Mama Kemi didn't care what anyone said. She cleaned him, fed him warm milk, and held him close as if he were her own. That evening as she rocked him to sleep, she whispered, "I will call you Tund, the one who has returned. You are home now." Meanwhile, Ada stayed hidden in another part of the village. She could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Tund's face. Every cry in the night sounded like his. She tried to convince herself that she had done the right thing, that he would live a better life without her. But her heart was heavy. For many nights, she wandered near the market, hoping to catch a glimpse of her baby. One night, she saw Mama Kemi carrying him. The old woman was smiling and singing softly. Ada hid behind a tree, tears streaming down her face. In that moment she realized that her son was finally safe, but the price was her own peace. The moon shone brightly that night, lighting the path she had taken before. Ada looked up and whispered, "Please God forgive me." She turned and walked back toward her lonely house, her footsteps slow and heavy like a woman carrying the weight of her own heart. And from that night on, the village would always remember the story of the young mother who left her child at the market, a story of pain, love, and the deep wounds that life sometimes brings. The sun had just begun to rise over the small village of Nkata, painting the sky with soft orange light. The roosters crowed, and the smell of smoke from morning fires floated through the air. The market, which had been empty through the night, slowly came to life. Women began to set up their stalls, arranging yams, peppers, and vegetables. Among them was Mama Kemi, an old woman with a gentle face and tired eyes. She walked slowly, leaning on her wooden stick, her wrapper tied tightly around her waist. She had lived alone for many years since her husband died, and her only child had passed away long ago. Yet, she still smiled at everyone she met, always saying, "Each morning brings new mercy." As she placed her basket of palm oil on the ground, she heard a faint sound, a baby's cry. At first, she thought it was coming from one of the women nearby, but the sound was weak and lonely, like a voice calling for help. She turned her head and listened again. The cry came from behind the old yam stall at the edge of the market. Mama Kemi's heart beat faster. She dropped her stick and hurried over, her feet kicking up dust. When she looked behind the stall, her eyes widened. Wrapped in a torn cloth lay a tiny baby boy. His little hands moved slowly and his face was wet with tears. He looked hungry, scared, and cold. "Oh my God," she whispered. She bent down, carefully picking him up. His body was light, almost too light. "Who could leave such a small angel here?" she said softly, her voice shaking. The baby opened his eyes for a brief moment and looked at her, as if he understood her words. Mama Kemi held him close to her chest and began to hum a quiet song. The baby slowly stopped crying, his small head resting against her shoulder. She looked around, hoping someone would come forward, but the market was silent. Everyone who passed stared in shock. "Is he yours?" one woman asked. "No," Mama Kemi replied, still rocking the child gently. "Someone left him here during the night." The woman gasped. "Ah, what kind of mother could do such a thing?" Mama Kemi sighed deeply. "A mother who has lost her way." She took the baby home to her small mud house by the edge of the village. Inside, everything was simple: a straw mat, a wooden stool, and a small fire in the corner. She laid the baby on her mat and looked at him again. His cheeks were round, and though his eyes were tired, there was something peaceful about him. She warmed some water, cleaned him carefully, and wrapped him in a clean piece of cloth she had kept from her younger days. Then she mashed a bit of banana and fed him slowly. He smiled, a small, shy smile that melted her heart. "You are strong," she said softly. "You must be meant for something great." When the neighbors heard what had happened, they came to see the baby. Some shook their heads and said, "He might bring trouble. You don't know where he came from." But Mama Kemi only smiled. "If God placed him in my hands, then he will bless us both." She decided to name him Tund, which means return. She said it softly as if the name carried power. Because he has returned to love, even after being left behind. From that day Mama Kemi raised Tund like her own grandchild. Though she had little food, she always made sure he ate first. When she went to the farm, she carried him on her back. When she fetched water, she sang songs to him. People in the village soon began to notice the bond between the two. They saw how Tund laughed whenever he saw her, how he clapped his little hands when she sang. The villagers started calling him the miracle child. Children would come to play with him, and even the elders smiled when he toddled around the village square. "A child raised in love will never forget it," they said. Mama Kemi's heart is pure. As Tund grew, he brought light into Mama Kemi's life. The once quiet house was now full of laughter. Every morning she would wake up to his tiny hand touching her face. "Mama," he would say in his small voice, "I'm hungry." She would laugh and reply, "Ah, this boy wants to finish all my food before the sun rises." One evening, after a long day of work, Mama Kemi sat outside with Tund. The air was cool and fireflies danced above the grass. She told him stories of brave men and kind women. He listened with wide eyes, sometimes laughing, sometimes asking questions. "Mama," he asked once, "who is my real mother?" Mama Kemi looked into the sky for a moment. "Your real mother is the one who loves you," she said softly. "And love is what I have for you." From that day Tund never asked again. He believed that love was enough. And for him it truly was. But not everyone in the village was kind. A few people whispered that Tun's real mother had cursed him, that he would one day bring sorrow. When Mama Kemi heard such words, she only smiled and said, "People fear what they don't understand. This boy is a blessing." Years passed and Tun became a bright and cheerful child. He helped Mama Kemi at the farm, fetched water for neighbors and shared his food with other children. Everyone loved him. Even those who once doubted began to say, "Maybe that old woman was right. The boy carries light in his heart." One afternoon while walking through the village, Tun saw a group of boys fighting. He ran to stop them saying, "Why fight? Let's share." His calm voice surprised them and they stopped. From that day the other children respected him. At night, when Mama Kemi prayed, she always thanked God for bringing Tund into her life. "He filled the space in my heart that loneliness once lived in," she said. But sometimes when she looked at him sleeping, she wondered who his real mother was. Did she ever think of him? Did she regret what she had done? Mama Kemi didn't know, but she prayed that wherever the woman was she would find peace. As for Tund, he grew up knowing only love. He never lacked care though he had little wealth. The villagers often told him, "Your mother may have left you, but God sent you another one." And every time he would smile and say, "Yes, Mama Kemi is the only mother I need." That night, as the moon rose high over Nkata, Mama Kemi sat outside her house, holding Tund close. She whispered, "You were lost, but you were found. You were forgotten, but now you are loved." The stars sparkled above them, and the soft wind carried her words away, spreading them through the quiet village. A village that would remember the day an old woman found a baby at the market and turned his story into one of hope and love. The years passed like quiet wind over the village of Nkata. The small paths that once felt new were now lined with the footprints of time. Ada, once known for her beauty and laughter, had changed. Her face had lost its glow, and her eyes carried the weight of regret. The men who once chased after her with smiles and gifts no longer looked her way. New, younger women had taken her place. The laughter that once filled her evenings was now gone, replaced by silence and loneliness. She lived in a small hut near the river, away from the center of the village. The roof leaked and the floor was cracked. Her clothes were old and her food was never enough. Sometimes she sold firewood to survive, other times she begged for a little yam or cassava from her neighbors. People pitied her, but no one truly understood her pain. Every night, when the moon was bright, Ada would sit outside and look up at the stars. She often thought about the child she had left at the market years ago, the tiny baby with soft eyes and a quiet cry. She wondered if he had survived, if someone had found him, or if fate had been cruel. The thought haunted her every day. There were nights when she heard the faint cry of a baby in her dreams. She would wake up sweating, whispering, "Tund, my child." But no one answered. Her heart had become a prison of guilt. She could never forgive herself, no matter how hard she tried. One sunny afternoon, Ada walked into the village square to buy some palm oil. Her feet were dusty and her clothes were torn, but her spirit still carried a quiet strength. As she walked, she heard voices, laughter, greetings, and the sound of people working together. She looked up and saw a group of young men helping the elders carry heavy bundles of firewood. Among them was one young man who caught her attention. He was tall, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. His hands were strong, but his movements were calm and respectful. He laughed easily, helping even the oldest of the elders without complaint. Something about him made Ada stop walking. She stared for a long time, her heart beating faster with every second. There was something familiar in his face, the curve of his smile, the shape of his eyes, even the way he turned his head. It felt like looking at a memory she had long buried. She whispered to herself, "Who is that boy?" Curiosity pulled her closer. She stood beside a woman selling beans and quietly asked, "Who is that young man helping the elders?" The woman smiled proudly. "Ah, that's Tund, Mama Kemi's boy. You must know him. Everyone in Kata knows him. He's kind, humble, and always helping others. People say he has the heart of an angel." The name hit Ada like a heavy stone. Tund. Her knees weakened and her breath caught in her throat. The world around her seemed to go quiet for a moment. She felt dizzy, her heart pounding hard. She had not heard that name in many years, the name she had whispered through tears when she left her baby behind. She looked again at the young man. He was smiling as he lifted another bundle of wood onto his shoulder, laughing with the old men around him. There was something in his laughter that pierced Ada's soul. It was the same soft sound she used to make him laugh when he was only a few weeks old. She covered her mouth with her hand, tears forming in her eyes. "It's him," she whispered. "It's my son." The woman beside her noticed her trembling. "Are you all right?" she asked. Ada nodded quickly, wiping her tears. Yes, I'm fine." But inside she was far from fine. A storm of emotions raged inside her, joy, sorrow, shame, and disbelief all at once. She wanted to run to him, to hold him, to tell him everything. But fear stopped her. What if he hated her? What if he knew she had abandoned him? What if he never wanted to see her again? She stood there, frozen, watching him from afar. That evening, Ada followed him secretly as he walked back toward the edge of the village. He stopped by a small mud house, Mama Kemi's house. The old woman was sitting outside, spinning cotton. When she saw him, her face lit up with pride. "Ah, my son, you are back," she said warmly. Tund smiled and bent to touch her feet in respect. "Mama, I helped the elders with their firewood today. They said I should greet you." Mama Kemi laughed softly. "You're a good boy, Tund. Your kindness brings me peace." She touched his head gently, her wrinkled hands full of love. Ada hid behind a tree, watching the scene with tears streaming down her face. She saw the way Mama Kemi looked at Tund, not as someone she found but as her own flesh and blood. Ada's heart twisted. She had lost years of her child's life, his first steps, his first words, his laughter. She had missed it all. When Mama Kemi and Tund went inside, Ada fell to her knees. The weight of her guilt felt unbearable. She pressed her hands against the earth and whispered, "God, forgive me. I left him, but you did not." 4 days after that, Ada could not stop thinking about them. She watched from afar, afraid to speak but unable to stay away. Every morning she saw Tund helping people, carrying water for old women, giving food to hungry children, fixing broken fences. He was respected, loved, and admired by everyone. One afternoon she saw a group of children playing near the market. Tund was teaching them how to carve wooden toys. The children laughed and one of them said, "Uncle Tund, tell us a story." He smiled and said, "Let me tell you a story about love and forgiveness." As he spoke, Ada listened from behind the stalls. Every word he said carried wisdom far beyond his years. She felt proud and broken at the same time. She wanted to shout, "That's my son," but shame held her back. That night she sat outside her hut, staring at the moon. She thought of the day she had left him at the market, how small and helpless he was, how she had walked away without looking back. Now he was grown, strong, and good-hearted. She wept bitterly, her tears falling into the dust. "Maybe this is my punishment," she whispered. "To see him happy but never call him mine." Still she thanked God silently. At least he was alive. At least he had been loved. And deep inside, she felt a strange peace knowing that Mama Kemi had given him the life she could not. The wind blew softly through the trees, carrying the sound of laughter from far away, Tund's laughter. Ada smiled weakly through her tears. "Live well, my son," she said quietly to the night. "Even if you never know me, I will always love you." She turned toward her small house, her heart heavy but full of something new, hope. The story she thought had ended long ago had just begun to find its way back to her. The morning sun rose softly over Nkata village. The air smelled of smoke and wet earth after the early rain. Birds sang in the mango trees, and women's laughter floated from the stream. But for Ada the world felt heavy and quiet. Her heart beat fast, her hands trembled, and her eyes were swollen from crying. She had made a decision that frightened her. She was going to see Mama Kemi and tell her the truth. For many nights, Ada had not slept. The face of her grown son, Tund, haunted her dreams. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him smiling, the same gentle smile he had when she saw him helping the elders. He looked happy and full of life, everything she had hoped for when she left him at the market years ago. But now guilt ate at her soul. She could no longer live in silence. That morning she walked the long path that led to Mama Kemi's small hut. The ground was muddy, and her bare feet sank into the soft soil. The sound of her footsteps was the only thing she could hear. She kept whispering to herself, "I must tell her. I must tell the truth." Her voice was low, as if she was trying to gather courage with each word. When she reached the hut, she stood by the doorway for a long time. The house was small, with a roof made of dry palm leaves. Smoke rose gently from the cooking fire. Inside, she could hear the sound of Tund's voice, light and warm, as he helped his mother grind pepper. He was humming a song, the same tune Ada used to hum when he was a baby. Her eyes filled with tears again. She waited until Tund went outside to fetch water from the well. Then she slowly stepped forward and knocked on the wooden door. "Mama Kemi?" Her voice trembled. The old woman looked up. Her hair was gray, her back bent, but her eyes were sharp and kind. She stared at Ada for a moment, surprised. "Ah, my daughter," she said softly. "It's been long since I've seen you here. Come in." Ada walked in slowly, her head bowed. Her throat felt dry and her knees felt weak. She could barely speak. "Mama," she began, her voice breaking. "I have something to say. Something I should have said long ago." Mama Kemi watched her quietly, sensing the storm behind her trembling voice. She did not interrupt. She only said, "Speak, my child. The truth never breaks the heart, it only frees it." Ada fell to her knees, tears running down her cheeks. "Mama, please forgive me," she cried. "It was me. I am the one who left that baby in the market years ago. I am Tun's mother." The words hung in the air like thunder. For a moment, everything went silent. Even the birds outside seemed to stop singing. Mama Kemi's hands froze where she sat. Her old heart ached, but her face remained calm. Ada continued, her voice full of pain. "I was young. I was poor. I was ashamed. I had nothing. I thought leaving him would give him a better life. I thought someone kind would find him, and you did. You saved him. You gave him what I could not." She wept uncontrollably, her hands clutching the ground. "Every day I thought of him. I saw his face in my dreams. I prayed for him even when I did not deserve to. I'm sorry, Mama. Please, please forgive me." Mama Kemi sat quietly for a long time. Then she rose slowly from her seat and walked toward Ada. She placed her hand gently on the younger woman's shoulder. "You left him," she said softly, "but love found him." Ada looked up, her eyes wide and wet. You are not angry?" Mama Kemi shook her head slowly. "Anger cannot raise a child. Only love can. When I found him that morning, I knew he had been left by someone who was lost, not by someone who was evil. God did not bring him to me by mistake. He wanted the boy to live and he wanted me to find him. You did wrong, yes. But sometimes pain teaches more than peace ever could." At that moment, Tun's voice came from outside. "Mama, I'm back." Ada gasped. She quickly wiped her tears, but her hands were still shaking. The door creaked open and Tun stepped inside carrying a clay pot of water. When he saw Ada kneeling on the floor, his face showed surprise. "Mama, what's happening?" he asked. Mama Kemi looked at him gently. "Tund," she said, her voice calm, "this woman has something to tell you." Ada turned to face him. For a moment she could not speak. She saw his eyes, the same eyes she had seen when he was a baby. Her lips trembled. "My son," she said softly, "I am your mother." Tun's eyes widened. He froze, staring at her as if he had not heard correctly. What did you say?" "I am the one who left you at the market," she said, her voice breaking again. "I was scared and lost. I made the worst mistake of my life. But I never stopped thinking of you. Not for one day." Silence filled the room. The sound of the wind brushing against the roof was the only thing that moved. Tun's hands shook slightly. He looked at Mama Kemi, then back at Ada. "Is this true?" he whispered. Mama Kemi nodded slowly. "It is true, my son." Ada could no longer hold back her tears. She bowed her head to the ground. "I do not ask you to love me," she said. "I only ask for your forgiveness." Tun stood there, his heart torn between pain and compassion. The truth felt heavy, yet deep inside he felt something else, understanding. He walked slowly to her and knelt beside her. "You gave me life," he said softly, "but she gave me love." Ada looked up at him, her eyes full of sorrow. He smiled gently through his tears. "I forgive you both. Without you I would not be here. And without her, I would not have known love." Mama Kemi's eyes filled with tears too. She placed her hands on both their heads and whispered, "Now my heart can rest. Forgiveness has found its home." They stayed like that for a long time, 3 broken hearts mended by love. Outside, the wind blew softly, carrying the scent of flowers from the fields. It was as if the whole village breathed a sigh of peace. Later that day, Tund walked with Ada to the old market, the same place she had left him years ago. The stalls were quiet now and the air smelled of rain. Ada stopped by the spot where she had laid him down as a baby. She touched the ground and wept silently. Tund put his arm around her shoulders. "It's over, Mama," he said kindly. "The past cannot be changed, but the future can be healed." Ada looked at him with trembling lips. "You are a better person than I could ever be." He smiled. "Maybe that's because love raised me." As the sun set over the village, the 3 of them, Ada, Tund, and Mama Kemi, sat together outside the small hut. They shared food, laughter, and quiet tears. And for the first time in many years, Ada's heart felt light. The burden she had carried for so long was finally lifted. Forgiveness had done what time could not. After that day, Ada never left the village again. She chose to stay with Mama Kemi, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she finally found a place where her heart felt at peace. Every morning she woke up before sunrise to help Mama Kemi cook for the orphans. The hut, once quiet and lonely, now echoed with children's laughter and soft songs. Mama Kemi was getting old, and her hands often shook when she tried to lift heavy pots. But Ada was always beside her, steadying her arms and saying softly, "Let me help you, Mama." The older woman would smile and nod, her eyes full of pride. "You have changed, my daughter," she would say. "You are no longer the woman who ran from her pain. You are the woman who turns pain into care." The villagers soon noticed Ada's transformation. Some remembered her as the proud young woman who used to walk through the market with her head held high, thinking of no one but herself. Others whispered about her past mistake, but those whispers soon faded as they saw the way she lived now, humble, kind, and full of love. Ada did not mind the gossip. She had found her purpose. Whenever new children were brought to Mama Kemi's hut, some lost, some abandoned, Ada would welcome them with open arms. She would hug them tightly, feed them, and tell them stories to make them smile. "You are not alone," she would say. "You are loved." Tund often came to visit after his teaching hours. He had become one of the most respected teachers in the village. Children loved him because he never shouted, never grew angry, and always believed in their dreams. When they made mistakes, he would tell them softly, "It's okay. What matters is that you learn and grow." He would sometimes sit under the big mango tree with his students and share his story, the story of how he was left as a baby, found by love, and healed by forgiveness. The children would listen with wide eyes, their small hearts moved by the lesson. One day a little girl asked him, "Teacher, did you ever hate your real mother?" Tund smiled gently. "No, my dear," he said. "Hate only hurts the one who carries it. Forgiveness is lighter. It gives peace to the heart." The girl nodded slowly, trying to understand. Tund continued, "You see, my mother made a mistake. But she also found the courage to tell the truth. That is what made her strong. And when you forgive someone, you give them, and yourself, a second chance at life." The children clapped, and one of them shouted, "We love you, Teacher Tund." He laughed and waved his hands. "And I love you all, my little stars." Back at home, Mama Kemi often watched them together and felt joy fill her old heart. "You see, Ada," she said one evening as they sat outside watching the sunset, "the boy you once left behind has become a light for others." Ada nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. "He is better than I ever dreamed. Sometimes I think God gave him two mothers, one to give him life and one to teach him love." Mama Kemi smiled warmly. "And both have done their part well." As the days turned into months, Ada's presence brought more peace to the village. She started teaching the orphans how to farm small gardens behind the hut. "If you plant with love," she told them, "the earth will bless you with food." She also taught them songs and simple lessons about kindness and truth. The children began calling her Mama Ada, just like they called the old woman Mama Kemi. One afternoon, a heavy rain poured down suddenly. The children ran out to play in the puddles, their laughter echoing through the fields. Ada stood by the doorway watching them with a smile. She felt warmth spread through her heart, a warmth she had not felt for many years. She turned to Mama Kemi, who sat near the fire, and said softly, "I never thought I could be happy again." Mama Kemi looked up. "Happiness is like rain, my daughter. It comes when you least expect it, but it always finds its way back." That night, when the rain stopped, Tund arrived, his clothes damp from walking through the muddy paths. He carried a small book wrapped in a cloth. "Mama," he said to Ada, "I wrote something." Ada took the book gently, her hands trembling slightly. On the cover it said, "The Boy Who Was Found by Love." "It's my story," Tund explained. "But it's not just about me. It's about you and Mama Kemi too. I want the children to know that forgiveness can heal anything, even the deepest wounds." Tears filled Ada's eyes. "My son," she whispered, "your words will heal more hearts than you can ever know." From that day, Tund read parts of his book to the village children every evening. The story spread beyond Nkata. Travelers who passed through the village carried it to other towns, telling people about the boy who forgave his mother and the woman who found him by love. People from far away began visiting Mama Kemi's hut to listen to her wisdom. They often said, "Mercy turns pain into peace." And truly, the little hut that once held one lost child now became a home for many. Years later, when Mama Kemi grew too weak to walk, Ada and Tund cared for her with the same love she once gave them. Every morning, they sat by her bed and listened as she whispered blessings. "My children," she said one quiet evening, I am proud. You both learned the most important lesson, that love is not about blood but about heart. Tund held her hand. We learned it from you, Mama? Mama Kemi smiled faintly and closed her eyes. Then my work is done. After she passed peacefully, the villagers gathered to honor her. Tund stood before them with Ada beside him. He looked at the crowd and said, "This woman taught us that love can grow from pain. She found me when I was lost and she gave us both a new life. Let us live the way she taught, with mercy, with kindness, with forgiveness." The people bowed their heads and even the children were quiet. In the years that followed, Ada continued Mama Kemi's work. She cared for every orphan who came to her door, never turning anyone away. She often said to them, "You are all my children. Love found me once and now I must share it." Tund continued teaching, but his lessons were not just about reading and writing. He taught about life, about mistakes, second chances, and the power of a kind heart. His students grew up to become kind men and women who carried his message wherever they went. Sometimes in the evenings, Ada would sit under the same mango tree where Tund once told stories. She would watch the children run, their laughter mixing with the sound of the wind. Her heart would swell with peace and she would whisper softly, "Thank you, God, for giving me another chance." As the stars filled the sky, Tund would walk to her side and sit quietly. Together they would watch the night spread across the village, calm, warm, and full of life. And though the world around them changed, the lesson they lived by never did. Forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds.